Hello, Mary. Welcome to the Ripple Effect. It's a pleasure to have you join us. Where am I finding you today?
Hey, John, how are you? It's good to be here. Thank you. Thanks for taking some time to chat with me. I'm looking forward to this. Well, you happen to find me here in my home in Texas after we have done a big round of travel to DC and to Chicago for IVC events. So I'm home here. Great, which is nice. I always tell people my office is wherever my laptop is, as I'm sure you say the same thing, right?
Absolutely. Well, listen, Mary, we're going to have a short conversation here about you, the IVC, the work you've done, the influence of the Jesuits. So, our friend St. Ignatius, the founder of the Jesuits, is famous for his saying to his Jesuit brothers, go and set the world on fire. Mary, who or what influenced you to go set the world on fire?
When I think of it from Ignatius' point of view, it was really about that idea of having so much love for the world and to go out into the world with that tremendous flame of love in us that comes from grace and from God. And so how do you go out and you animate that? So when I think about that from my life, I really have to point at my own father. My father, World War II veteran, all of that story out there in DC and Maryland, made a life, chose to become a lawyer, went to Georgetown Law School, chose to become a lawyer, but he really chose to become a lawyer who was a public servant. And he was uh, served as an attorney in his town, and then he also ran for county council, and he was um, in so many different ways. He was a county attorney. He served his community.
Yeah.
And it was that influence in my life. And growing up as a little girl on his heels, going on campaigns, listening to who he did, and watching a man go out there and really listen and care about the men and women in his community, from his neighborhood streets on to the town, onto the county, onto the state, and to want to somehow make things better for others was his life. And looking back now, I realize I had an enormous teacher in just watching how he lived and what his choices were. And so I'd have to say he was really the the guardian angel of my own decisions to enter into service and public service and social service work.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
On your LinkedIn, Mary, I couldn't help but notice I was glancing at it. You took an interesting tact in describing yourself, and I was intrigued, and I felt I had to ask you this question. You describe yourself as an entrepreneurial for social justice missions. Tell me a little bit about what this means.
It's great that you're intrigued about it too. It's a phrase that it came to my head when I was thinking about how I've approached my work over several decades now. And when we talk about an entrepreneur, usually we're talking about it in the business world, in business models, and you're
Yeah.
coming up with a fresh new
Here in
idea.
Silicon Valley, we all claim to be entrepreneurs.
Exactly. And it was innovation, especially in Silicon Valley, right? Innovation was also going to drive the productivity and also the financing and the money and the success. But innovation was really, really core in your own industry, right? And how you're going
Yep.
to grow. I think when I came into the whole sector, social service sector, ministry sectors, my own life, looked at, we're not going to solve social problems the same old way. You've got to come up with innovation. You've got to come up with new ways to do things, fresh ways to do things. And so many of the projects and things that I created were unique. Like, for example, one of the first things I did in JVC, I was a teacher in the inner city of Newark, New Jersey, and continued being a teacher for another 6 years after my JVC service. But that experience showed me that we needed to look at the families, the family systems, kids, what they go through and dealing with their healing, their traumas, whatever their life is. And I was a full-time pastoral associate, and wanted to work on how could parishes be a space where families could come and grapple with some of the everyday type of things that they have to do. And how could we bring in the science of psychology and counseling? How could we bring in mental health care? How could we bring into these things into the spaces of parishes where people would feel safe and nurtured and could do that. And so I created a parish-based counseling center that I had and ran for close to 18 years. And we had probably about 150 people a week come in for services. And it was holistic. It was unique. We had social workers, we had counselors, we had a spiritual director, we had the priests, the Franciscan priests who were out there in the community referring people to the center. It was really unique. It's still up there in Jersey going on. So it's an idea. So that's an example of what I'm trying to talk about. You know, how could we create new ways, new things, try them, connect aspects of things and start something new. So that's really how I've approached things. Some are successful, and sometimes people look at you like you have three heads. And it's like, no, can't do that.
But after all, the mantra of an entrepreneur is fail fast, as they say here in the try
I've never
things,
heard that.
work on them, see if you can iterate them, see what works, what doesn't work, but keep moving and keep trying to make a difference. So it's a interesting way to describe it, and I love the way you've tied it to the experience you had in the New Jersey in the parish center. It sounds like that was well ahead of its time too.
It
Today,
was.
nowadays we think of that much more holistically.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that vein, talking about careers, many PJVs, so our favorite term, the prospective JV, before they become the JV and then the FJV. But anyhow, on the PJV front, in their discernment process, inevitably they're going to encounter the challenge of thinking through what is giving a year of postgraduate service mean in the context of following along with conventional thinking or normal career concerns. How did you think of that, and what advice from your experience would you give a JV who's thinking about providing and giving a year of postgraduate service?
Well, John, I know you and I have had conversations in past before, but I really wish that every young person could spend a year of service in the way that JVC does. I think it's a magnificent opportunity and period in a young person's life that where you're really free from all the rigors of academics and you've finished that track, but now you can go out for a minute and go out into the world, bring that gift of who you are into the world where there's a need. But in that process, you discover yourself in ways you can't discover yourself in the traditional academic settings. It's a uniqueness that is such a rare and wonderful opportunity.
And when you say it, it's at a moment in your life when you're very open to opportunity and can be very influenced by opportunity, which is wonderful.
Exactly. And you're also at a time in your life, our 20s is a time when we're trying to really learn, who am I? Who am I uniquely as God has created me and as I go into my adulthood? So you're still probing that question so powerfully. And this year of service, I often think of Gandhi had a quote. So if you want to find yourself, pour yourself into service. And when I think of that quote, I look back even to my own life. Like, I came out of college. I thought JVC was going to be great. I'm doing it in the 60s and 70s where, service and going in and helping the world that was healing from an era that's not too different from the era we're in right now. It was really extremely troubling for our generation. And to go in there and to start to do the work, I had no idea. They sent me to the inner city of New York to teach. I mean, something new. There's no typical guardrails, just very much a JVC experience, right? You just go in and different guardrails, different experience.
Who's in charge? You are.
Exactly. Oh my God, I had to do things I didn't think I was capable at 21 years old. I mean, just all that, right? But then in that process, you start to see yourself. You start to think differently. You start to question in the service experience itself, but also in your JV community and other people, young people you meet. You start getting some like-minded people and friends, and you're in the world. And then you get a mirror. And that's the discernment process. That's the beautiful thing about Ignatian spirituality. It's the discernment. So who am I in this? For me in teaching, and I said it to you before, I started saying, these young people and their families need support. I think I'm drawn not to law like my father had been, where everybody wanted me to go, but into social services, into ministry and mission and counseling. And I only came to discover that about myself through the JVC experience that took me outside. And I got to see myself. And so I think that is a critical value. It's not just the value of what you're doing in the world, the gift you are in the world in that year, and you are a gift in the world in that year. It's also how you learn to see yourself anew and discern. And you have the gifts and tools to discern. And then if you take that forward in life, every little thing as you move forward, whether it's a choice of graduate school, whether it's a choice to continue the work you're doing, whether it's whatever it is, you learn that process of discernment and self-awareness if you continue to have the mindset of service. So I think that's a really powerful idea that Gandhi put on the table for us. If you really want to find yourself, pour yourself into service.
One of our favorite phrases, that's the phrase ruined for life. You wrote an article for our JVC Magazine this year that's, by the way, folks, coming to your doorstep soon. And you had a great personal take on what this phrase means to you. You said it means experiencing a learning of the limitations of our own bubbles. You want to say a little bit more about that?
What I love and smile about is you say that phrase, and there are thousands of us out in the world today that just knows exactly what you mean. And we can say, yes, that was our experience. What I experienced in that, when it happened again, we're going on early on, there were two experiences in my senior year of college and then into JVC, where I was thrust out into parts of the world I had never seen before. You know, I grew up white middle class, go to Jesuit school, all of that. My parents devoted and drove to that. This was a value for them, all of that. But I remember the first time I took a service trip down into the Appalachian region in Kentucky. And as the car is going off of 95, heading in there into the depths of Kentucky and into Vanceburg, and I saw poverty I never knew was just 10 hours away from my home. And it was visual, it was visual. And to spend the time there, we did, those families and the poverty. And I began to say, wow, I truly don't know what I don't know. I don't understand the experiences. I have a lot more to learn. And the same thing happened when JVC sent me into the inner city of Newark, which was not right after, but after the riots in the 70s. And I just saw incredible experiences that had been so foreign to me. And that was when I went, wait a minute, I really have been in my view. Now, the same could be said if I grew up there. I would have had my view and not known anything different. So it's a way in which I continue to struggle. I continue to struggle with my bubbles all the time. How do I come to understand another person's experience from their point of view? I can never truly, but I can ache to try to learn and to understand. And that was the thing that helped me even desire to become a good therapist. Because when you're a therapist and you're listening with another human being, I don't know their exact lived experience, their memories, their experiences in life, but I can listen and learn and question even my own assumptions, my own biases, and to keep that active questioning going on inside. And I think that is, when we talk about being ruined for life, I think that's what us as young people get into, that opportunity for that kind of growth and experience, because we are displaced by our assignments. We go on an adventure, and it's not just do-gooderism. It's actually getting in there and growing in our humanity and understanding we are different. We have different experiences. How can I learn what I don't know?
Yeah, yeah. I like that phrase, grow in our humanity. And you do that by listening and learning. And despite what I think has been more recent discussion, empathy sits in the middle as the virtue that guides all of that. So I like to ask a fun question. What was your favorite go-to JVC meal with your community?
I love that question. Well, first of all, going back in the 70s, they like had no food choices in the world. I mean, you go to a grocery store, you had
Yeah,
like,
it wasn't
bologna and
organic
cheese and,
probably.
yeah. I think we even had minute rice. I mean, there was just very little choices in the grocery stores for 50. We each got $50 a month, I think, for food. I don't know. I
Oh,
can't remember exactly.
my God.
Yeah. Anyway, I do what I remember fondly when you say about community. We had a community member, Sandy, who she just was an artist. She knew how to take things like stuff we never heard of, like fresh parsley and whatever, and just make magic out of minute rice and foods. And she was just wonderful, wonderful at this. And that was my gift. But the real memory that I loved, we had a Jesuit, Tony Orzardo, who was a Jesuit at St. Peter's College, who would come once a week on Thursday nights and have dinner with us. And that was our, go-to community night. He would come, we would have dinner together. We'd usually ask Sandy to cook because it would be good. And Tony would always bring, every time he would bring a jug of O-Pee-Chee wine. Yes, my friend, wine came in jugs with twist caps. That's what we got. And he would bring a box of Entenmann's donuts.
Oh, my
Well, this
goodness.
was like fancy pants for us. I mean,
Yeah.
he could have brought the most wonderful wine, $1,000 wine, and the cakes galore. That's what O-Pee-Chee wine and Entenmann's meant to us in our simple lifestyle. It was a joyful Christmas day on Thursdays when Tony would come with those food sources, but also with his care and love for us as a community. But that's our memory. And whenever I've talked with my former community friends, we always remember those
Yeah.
foods.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
thank
great.
you very much, Mary, for this lovely discussion and for the service you do at the IVC and all the ways you've given back over a lifetime. It's really you're an impressive person, and
Mm.
I say that with deep gratitude. So thank you again for joining us today.
Oh, you humble me, John. Thank you for what you're doing. I love JVC. I'm glad you're there at the helm. It's a great organization. So you have my help and support in any way that you need. Thank you guys very much.